Good morning, team. This is Coach Chad here with the Quantum Leap Nutrition Program. Now, we are 1 week in, guys, and your guys' body transformation process is about to begin. Now, we have not implemented any caloric numbers or any macronutrient profiles or any of that information right now because we're just starting. You guys have done your initial consults, and now the coaches are working on your nutritional information. And you have been given a few tasks this week on your first email, was to start tracking your food. So utilizing MyFitnessPal and starting to get comfortable tracking your food. Today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to cover how to use your personal progress tracker. So this was the Google sheet that was shared with you, and it's titled QL Personal Progress Tracker. Now I'm going to share my screen here so that you guys can see this, so that we have access, and we're going to go over exactly how this works. So you guys can see my screen now, and you can see that I'm on the very first of 5 sheets inside of your progress tracker. And I'm down here on the weekly tracking. Then we have the weekly question submission, which is your second sheet. And then the 7-day food log, which is your third sheet. The nutritional audit, which is your fourth sheet and primarily used for the coaches. And then, of course, your weekly reflections, which you guys are going to be using as a journal/diary to keep us as coaches informed on your progress and how things are going for you. So we're going to go back to the very first sheet, the weekly tracking. Now on this sheet right here, each of you guys have been shared a personal one for you. Now I'm just going to update this with my information for right now. So I'm going to say that this is Coach Chad's progress tracker goal. Now we will get into goals, but for now, get shredded. Okay, so my goal is to get shredded. Now, of course, you guys are going to have a much more specific goal, and you'll understand very quickly how that goal is not an appropriate goal. We'll get into that over the next few weeks in your mindset components of your participant guides. Okay, but that's gonna be nice that you actually put your goal there, which we'll get into over the next month or so. Now, everything in the bottom here that you can see in purple, or in pink, is for the coaches. This is on your monthly progress checkups with your coaches, where they'll be doing waist circumference, hip circumference, as well as your in-body scans and your progress pictures. Now they have your height from your in-body scan. So I am 178 centimeters tall, and I did my waist and hip circumferences, which I actually don't have off the top of my head, but I'm just going to say 150 and hips 155. Okay, and what that's going to give me is it's also going to give me a waist to height ratio, which we'll get into in a later video as to why that's important. Okay, that number right there is an indicator, general indicator of health or well-being. And then you're going to see just simply little X's in here, which mean that your coaches have had a chance to meet with you and input their to complete the in-body scan and the pictures. So none of this information right here is going to be imperative for you. It is for us as the coaches to be utilizing. But all the stuff up above, the green, the white, and the gray here, this is all for you. So we have baseline, which was the week that we just completed. And then this week right now, which is December 20th, this is where you guys will input your movements, or your updates. So right now, you guys are going to start tracking your body weights daily, every morning after going to the washroom without having any glasses of water, anything like that. You're going to get your body weight and you're going to put it into MyFitnessPal. In the MyFitnessPal video, we discussed how you can add your weight in there. Now, we use everything on a weekly average. So what you're going to need to do is look back at your week, at all of your body weights, and find the average. So it'll take you 1 or 2 minutes to calculate that, and you'll put your average body weight in here. We're not interested on the body weight of that day because your body weight fluctuates too frequently, and we'll get into later as to why that is as well. But for now, we need to simply put my weight in. So my initial weight was 141.6, and this week's average, I'll assume that we did 141.2. Okay, so I dropped 0.4 pounds this week, which won't be acceptable in time, but for now it is. And you'll see that I dropped 0.4 pounds. It indicates it here. Now let's just assume I'm a week ahead now. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to drop down to 140.5. So if I drop down to 140.5, it's going to show me that I dropped 0.7 pounds from week 1 to week 2. So from December 20th to December 27th, but my total pounds dropped is 1.1. And this is going to be tracked across your entire 26 weeks of the Quantum Leap. So this is going to be one level of performance indicators that will be incredibly important to keeping you accountable, and so that the coaches as well as yourself can see the progress that you're making. Because we're going to get into the next few weeks where we're going to start to understand how much weight you actually should be dropping per week, what's excessive weight drop in a week, because we don't want that. That may sound great, but you'll traditionally lose a lot more muscle mass than required and that we want. And then what's an unacceptable weight loss? And this is going to be how we start to dictate out your calories and ensuring that we have everything correct with regard to your macronutrient profiles and caloric loads. So this is going to be very important that you fill this out every single week. It is going to require a lot of effort, not time, just effort on your end to simply be tracking your body weight every single morning. And I will say at minimum, I would like to see minimum of 5. So whatever body weights you track throughout the week, if you do happen to miss 2 days, you're just going to simply take the 5 that you have and then average those, and that will give you your weekly body weight. Okay, so again, it is a weekly average. Now, if we drop down to circumferences, again, I'll have a document for you, just reviewing how to do your circumferences. Now, I said that I was 150 here and 155, which aren't accurate, but we're just using them as place fillers right now. And as you're losing weight, you're also going to note these to go down. So you're going to see 145.5, and the exact same thing is going to happen here. Oh, sorry, I put 154.4. So apparently I've lost weight and gained waist circumference. But either way, you'll see that I have a negative 4.4 change in body weight. So let's imagine the next week I don't accidentally input the wrong one and I go 149.5. And as I drop to 149.5, you'll see that I dropped 4.9 centimeters this week, and overall 1.84 centimeters. And this, of course, is repeated inside of the hip circumferences. So just as a review, the waist circumference is actually a navel circumference. So it's around the belly button. So the tape should be taut, no twists in it. It should be nice and smooth. And you're going to measure, maybe it might be something you even get someone else to measure, but this has to be done once a week. We're going to do this on Fridays. Okay. So I hope that everyone, if you want to change the day, you're welcome to, but Fridays will be a perfect day to do this before the weekend, and just kind of cap off the week, if you will. And that's also the first day that we did, for most of you, did your baseline tests as well. So you guys are going to continue doing waist measurements, and again, around the navel. Hip circumference is actually around the greatest protrusion or size of the glutes. So when you look from the side in the mirror, the largest portion of your glutes, you're going to measure around there. And also a reminder that when you do measurements, you're going to do measurements 3 times, and you're going to take an average of your 3 measurements. So we don't want one measurement that may be off. We want them to do 3 measurements and ensure that we are accurate and we have as best of an accuracy as we can as we go across here. So I'm just going to drop some numbers in here just for fun, just so we can see how this auto calculates, and you'll get a feel for how this works. Okay. Make sure you input your numbers correctly. Otherwise you'll have some information error. So there we go. And now the measurements in the body weight are pretty straightforward. Just requires 1 time a week measurements and daily body weight measurements. Now the adherence portion down here going to be the next step, where you're going to track your total calories. Now right now you guys are simply playing around with utilizing MyFitnessPal, getting comfortable with inputting your foods and your meals. As we give you calories, what we're going to do is the exact same thing we do with the body weight. You're going to be putting every single morsel of food that you ingest into MyFitnessPal. It will give you a daily caloric load, and it's also going to give you protein totals for the day. Your job will be to drop these in. So right now, I actually am taking in 3,000 calories a day, and I take in 230 grams of protein. Now, I actually lost my Apple Watch, so I can't track my steps anymore. So I'll have to get on that. And then I did 3 training sessions this week. So your average calories are going to be done the exact same way as you did your weight. You take your 7 numbers throughout the week, and then you divide them together, or you add them up and divide them by 7 to get your average. Okay. And then what we're going to be able to see is we're going to be able to see what your calories are. So let's say the next week I have an average of 2,950 calories, which as I jump into my deficit with you guys, I'm going to be dropping down to as low as 2,500. I will be maintaining my protein, or possibly even taking it up a little bit. And there is a little bit of a guide or flexibility that you have with regard to your numbers here. We want to see within about 10 grams plus or minus of the goal that will be set out for you. So either way, what this is for is, again, part of the accountability, but for you to actually see. So if we note here on body weight, and this is just I haven't done any calculation on here, of course, I'm just playing around. But on week number 3 here, the December 27th, which I'm getting ahead of myself, I indicated that I dropped 0.7 pounds and I have an average of 2,950 calories. Over time, what the coaches are going to be able to see, and this is incredibly important that we're accurate and honest with our numbers here, otherwise all of our calculations will be off. We can use the caloric load to indicate how much weight we're losing. And again, we'll get into this more detail later, but it's the rule of 3,500, and that will make more sense in the future. But a brief primer on that right now. Essentially, every pound of fat loss requires a caloric deficit of 3,500 calories. So if you wanted to lose 1 pound per week, you would have to have a caloric deficit of 500 calories per day across the 7 days of the week, and that would give you a 1 pound drop. Now, for some of you guys, we may have a increased drop than that. We might be looking for over 2. Usually, if I'm in a hard cut, I will be going anywhere as high as 2.6 percent pounds of my total body weight per week drop. And then for smaller people or people with not as much fat loss to lose, that might be very, very small, only fractions of a pound. But what we can do is we, as the coaches, can follow these numbers and have an indication as to where you are and where things are at. So we can give you the best updates on how we would like to change your calories if needed and to see your progress. And again, the number one thing here is consistency. Okay. So you guys, if you have a tracker for steps, you're welcome to use it. You can drop your numbers in here. We'll get more into the NEAT protocol, which is the non-exercise adapted thermogenesis, which is essentially all movement and exercise, or just well, movement's the best way to probably put it, outside of structured exercise. So walking to your car, fidgeting throughout the day, me bouncing around as I usually am, me talking with my hands, all of that adds up in NEAT. Parking a little further away from the grocery store, going for an extra walk, that all adds into your step count and is a big component of the daily caloric burn that you can experience. And then, of course, we want to see, are you tracking your workouts? Now, some of you guys are doing resistance training workouts, some of you guys doing CrossFit programs, some of you guys aren't structured working out, but you're going for walks and using that as your exercise. I would like you just to simply indicate in here how many times a week you get out to do those activities. Okay. So you can see how this works. Then in a month's time, we'll come back in and the coaches will redo the numbers for you here. And we will be reviewing weekly all of these numbers. So we have a pretty good guide as to where you are. The faster you get onto task and the faster we get going in January 1st, the faster you're going to start to see these gains and this movement. Okay. So I'm just going to delete this all out here so I don't forget to do it later. And we're going to go over to one of the other sheets here. Okay. So we're going to scoot over to the next sheet, which is the weekly question. Now, right now, you might have lots of questions. I don't know. But each week, we would like you to submit a question. Now, remember, this sheet is shared with us and your coaches. So this week, I simply have a question of, and try not to ask questions that are going to be answered in the future, like what is my caloric load? That's what we're going to get to. But if you have questions around MyFitnessPal, the goals, the mindset, and the nutrition workbooks, please add them here. And you're welcome to add as many questions as you like. What we're going to be doing is the coaches will then be reviewing these questions, meeting and going over these, and then submitting them into future weeks' responses from myself or the team to give you the answers to the questions that you are seeking. We want to make sure that we are hitting on all the pieces of information that you require as you go through the 6-month transition and you go through your body transformation. So this is a place for you to communicate. Now, of course, you can communicate with us via email on response to our emails, but it's just nice to have it all in one spot so it doesn't get lost in the hundreds of emails that come in per week from us. So this is your place where you can submit a weekly question or questions, and the more pointed they are, the better they are, and that way we can implement them. And remember, It's that classic statement, there's no silly question, but if you're thinking it, someone else probably is as well. So please ask your questions in here. The coaches will go over them. We may or may not have time to go over every single question, but I think we can hit most, or we might bring and start to see some similar trends in the questions where so we can spend a little bit more time within that. Of course, we're in a 6-month process. So to deliver all the information the first week is very challenging. So we have kind of a drip feed of the information coming. So some of the things may be coming in the next few weeks or months, but if you guys have questions, again, drop them here. The 7-day food log, this is going to actually be something more important for January. So when we get into January 2022, you're going to be doing some 7 to 14-day tracking of your foods, and we want very specific numbers, and that way we can actually see exactly where your protein, carbs, and fats are coming from. We're going to get into more details as to why that's important, but for right now I'm just going to leave this because it's not that important for today. Now over the next week or so, you're also going to receive this, and now this one I'm going to have to do a different video on in the future as well because it's very detailed. There's a lot of information here, but this document is actually for the coaches. All you need is this number right down here, because this is what we're going to be inputting for you to drop into MyFitnessPal as goals and as macronutrients and caloric loads that you need to follow for your first step within the Quantum Leap. So once you get comfortable with MyFitnessPal and you're moving forward, the next step will be for you to input these numbers and then hit them accurately in the first couple of weeks. And as you do that, you're going to start to see your weight loss move substantially. And based on all the InBody scores, this is where we would give you just a little bit more information. So I'll just do a bit here. So I'm going to go Coach Chad's here. His body weight was 241.6. The last time I did an in-body scan, I was at 8.8, but it's actually a little bit higher now. So I'm going to say we're probably closer to 12.8% body fat. Now, what that gives me is it gives me a lean body mass and a total fat weight, which means it shows how much I can lose and how much skeletal muscle mass I'm holding, which will greatly increase and dictate for our coaches what the nutritional loads are going to be and the macronutrient profiles. As you go down here, you're going to see resting metabolic rate. So this is essentially the number that you require just to live, if you will. It's a baseline for you. So I need 2,400 calories a day for me to simply be lying in bed and breathing and digesting and doing all those basic human needs, if you will. And that's how many calories I need there. And then we take an activity multiplier. Now, this one's very important. It's a bit of a guess. And that's why that initial consult or questionnaire was very important to us. We want to see how active are you? So for myself, I actually spend a lot of my day right here behind a computer. So I'm not as active as I'd like to be. I try to go for walks and I get into the gym to train. And I'm fairly active while I'm coaching others, but my activity level is not as high as I would like it to be. So I'm going to use a number somewhere between like 1.3 and 1.4. People who are very active, being maybe some of our sport athletes that are training twice a day or for multiple hours, or if you're a professional athlete, or if you have a job where you're very active. So if you're a framer or something like that, you might have a little higher number here because we need to have a multiplier relative to the activity that you do to that's going to be above your resting metabolic rate to create the appropriate caloric load that you're going to require. So that's the next step the coaches will work towards. Then we dictate out how much weight you're actually supposed to lose. Now, of course, most people say as much as possible, but that's actually not accurate. We want to make sure that we are losing the appropriate amount of weight. Like as I mentioned earlier, excessive weight loss will lose muscle mass with it, which you do not want to do from a metabolic function perspective and a health perspective. Muscle mass is incredibly important to maintain. So we have usually 0.5 to 1% of your total body weight that we would like to lose per week. And this is relative to what your body fat percentage is. So for myself, I would be probably in the 0.75. So I'd be looking at 1.8 pounds per week of loss, which then dictates about 4,342 calories based on that principle of 3,500. And then we go down and we start to set out what the actual caloric deficit per day would be. And then you can see where earlier I mentioned my caloric load is somewhere around 2,500 per day when I'm in a pretty drastic cut. So you can see it's 2,508 is my calculation right there. And then the coaches will dictate out your protein needs, your fat needs, and your carbohydrate needs, dictating your basic totals that you're going to be putting into MyFitnessPal. Now, this is all in the future. I will have another another video going into this as well, but a little primer on it right now, just a little bit of information for you before we get any further, just to give you guys some creative stuff to think about. Maybe you can look at this while you're playing around and input some numbers if you feel free, or if you wish to. The last sheet in here is your weekly reflections. Now, the weekly reflections is a space. Think of it as your journal, okay? I'm a big fan of journaling, and I have a lot of different books and things that I like to write in, and I do a daily journal, and that kind of does schedule and other things for me. But what we want you guys to share, and this is for you to share in here, and be open, honest, and as forthright as you can with your information on here, because the coaches will be reviewing it on a weekly basis as well. But a personal win. So what was your win this week? And this is something you can write as much as you want. The text will simply wrap. It can be as short as you want as well, but what was your win? Now, maybe this week the win was just simply avoiding some of the cookies in the Christmas season. So you could jot that in there. What could have I done better this week? Probably avoiding some of those cookies that kept getting dropped at my door all the time. I appreciate it from the athletes dropping off some gifts, but boy, there's only so much chocolate a man can eat. So I would like to assume I could have maybe had better strategies in place to avoid some of those temptations. Now, if you go into what did I learn this week, this is going to become incredibly important later. We haven't got into a lot of the learning yet, but if you take some time to reflect, what have I learned? And this is one of my favorite questions I do in my daily journaling is, what have I learned today? And I do that on a daily basis because we are always learning. And so take your biggest item of the week or multiple that you learned, and this might be, this could be outside of nutrition, but I think given the fact of what our goals are with body transformation, it would be nice if it was inside of the mindset nutrition. So when you read your documents and your guides this week, you might find that one of the things you learn is the new concept of ABC goals and why those are so important and why we're going to ask you to stretch within your goals. Okay, that's something that's going to come up in time. So you guys can feel free this week to fill this out, even though there may not be a lot of information based on what we've done, but you can definitely fill this out. How will I ensure next week is better than the last? So again, it may be linked to how could have I done better this week? Maybe not. But what strategies, what things do you think that you can do that would allow you to improve your performance next week? And the more you spend time thinking and writing about these things, the more engaged you will be. And we know there is a very important learning integration when you physically write something down and take the time to think about it. So that's why we want you to do these weekly reflections. Then the last ones are all just drop down menus, and these are just important to try and figure out how you're doing. The first one is sleep, 7 to 8 hours. Again, in the future, we're going to get more into what proper sleep is and how you best prepare for sleep. But for right now, it's 7 to 8 hours a night that we really want to achieve. Any less than that, you will begin to become sleep deprived. There are very few people who can function properly with less, especially when it comes to weight loss and performance. So you're just going to simply click the drop down menu and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, poor. I had very poor sleep this week. 2, less than average. 3, average. And then 4, better than average. 5, crushed it, man. I really did all the things I wanted to do with sleep. And what we want to see is just simply trends here. This is going to be the most important thing. And you'll go through this with sleep. You'll go through this with stress. Did you manage stress levels? Now, this is all subjective, of course, but it's just a nice time to reflect and a time for our coaches to see how you're doing. And if there's some major issues, maybe we can reach out and have some conversations. Nutrition. So how did I adhere to my macros? We're not quite there yet, but again, how did you do this week? That will become very important in the future. Workouts. How did I adherence to my goals I set for my workouts and my attendance? And then lastly, a positive mental attitude. This is an incredibly important one. I don't care what you're doing in life, business, relationships, family, whatever it might be, positive mental attitude is going to be one of the most imperative things that you bring to the table and you bring to your daily practice. So a positive mental attitude, how did you do on that? And this is usually a struggle for a lot of people. We have very high expectations for ourselves, but it's very challenging to maintain, but we should be always working on it. So those are our 5 things. So this week, I want you guys to input into your December 20th week, your weekly reflections, as well as simply going over to your weekly tracking and do your measurements. Start doing your body weights as indicated in your weekly email. All of these things will be very important in the future. And I need you guys to get in the habit of doing it now. Start now. Start now to start implementing all of these practices. Okay. So I'm going to stop my share here for a second and scoot back over. I hope that was useful. I know it's a bit of a long video, guys, but I think it's imperative that we spend enough time to understand why the progress tracker is there and why we're doing it, and also how it is useful for us as coaches to be able to help you in your process as well across the next 26 weeks. And I would like to remind you guys, the faster that you get towards your goals and your habits and implementing the things that we have coming to you over the next 2 weeks, the better the progress you're going to make. Don't stall on making these steps. So if you can start to do these small steps, being your progress tracker and your weekly reflections now, it's going to seem that much easier. You're going to lessen the learning curve as we throw more at you over the next couple of weeks. I'll leave it there, guys. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and also a fantastic Christmas. You'll be getting videos from me over the next little while, but it is the Christmas season. So I wish you guys all the best. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I hope I see you guys around. So anyhow, signing off. Thanks a ton, guys. Appreciate it.